Now I want to take a look at adding on to this form and use some other HTML components that are pretty common in forms. So we're going to have radio buttons where you can select gender, male or female. We'll have a drop-down box where you can choose what state you were born in. And then the last thing, we'll have some checkboxes where you can make multiple selections for hobbies or sports teams or whatever you need to do that for. So let's take a look at how we'll get started on those. So after age, I'm just going to add in another row. So I'm just going to copy and paste to make this quick. And I'm going to change this to gender. And I'm just kind of tidying up my HTML here a little bit to make it easier to read. I'm going to change the type to radio button, or radio. The name is going to be gender. I'm going to put a value in there, and I'll do male. And then the text that gets displayed. And I'll copy this whole thing and paste it again. And we'll set up for female. So notice when we're doing the radio buttons, the input type for both is radio. The name for both is gender. So this is one of the few times where we want the objects named the same. So if you choose male, I want it to come across as gender, or if you choose female, I want it to come across as gender. If you choose male, I want it to come across as the object gender with the value equal to male, or the object gender with the value equal to female. So this is the text that's displayed. This is the value that's passed. This is the name of the object as it's moving across. So we save this up. Let's take a look and see what it looks like in our form. And you can choose one or the other, but not both. So things look good there. Now I need to set up results to receive this information. So again, this is just another parameter coming across. For ease, I'm going to cut and paste. And I'm going to name the variable gender. And the object name that I expect to be coming across is gender. And it'll either be populated male or female based on the value from the button you select. And then I want to just display that back. So I will put another row on my table. Okay, everything looks in order. Let's test it. Okay, male is coming across correctly. And female is coming across correctly. So our buttons are working accurately. So that's using radio buttons and passing the data from radio buttons. So let's look at a drop-down box now. I'm just going to add it as another row on my table. And what state were you born in? Let's go with where. Where were you born? So these are not inputs. These will be selects. And the name will be state. So this is what's going to get passed as the object, and then the value will be one of these things that we add underneath here. So option. I'm going to have the first one be blank. So I'm programming my drop-down box. It's a select box, so I'm using the select, open and close. The select needs a name. This is state, so that'll be the name of the object that's coming across. And that object will have a value, and that value will either be blank or a state name or other. And the first thing that will get displayed is the first option here, and it's choose a state. So later when I'm doing some validation, I can check to make sure that it is not blank, that it's moved off of this value. They can select one of these 4, or they can select other. One of those 5, or they can select other. So let's save it, and let's see what the form looks like. Great, looks like I thought it would. So now we need to set up results to receive this information. And my variable name, I'm picking a state, and the object that's coming across is named state. And the last thing I need to do is display that information. And let's test everything out. Saved it up. Refresh the page. And it's working correctly. I chose Missouri, and it came across as Missouri. And I would want to test every one of those options just like I did to make sure they were coming across correctly. I want to test my clear button and make sure it resets everything. And it does. So the last thing I want to look at quickly is adding checkboxes. So when we're looking at our form information, we can type things in, we can put numbers in there and convert them from strings to numbers and where we're receiving them. These you can pick one or the other, but not both. Here you can only pick one. So now we want to look at checkboxes where you can select more than one thing. So now I want to take a look at checkboxes. But before I do, I've done a few things here. I've put a spacing in here a little bit to kind of clean it up, and I've dropped the buttons down. Again, I'm using tables. Probably not the best way to go about doing this, but I'm just simply trying to make it functional as quickly and easily as possible. So how I did this was I just inserted a blank table row. This is a non-breaking space, or it's like pressing the space bar. So I've created a table row, and in the table datas for each column, I've just put a blank space. And I did that everywhere I wanted a space. So after age, but before gender, gender before state, and state before this class checkbox. When I'm looking now at the specifics of this class checkbox, it's on its own table row. Here's the label. And this is the input type for the checkbox. So it's a checkbox. The name is class. So all of the checkboxes that pertain to this grouping will have the same name. Then they'll have values that are associated with that checkbox. And then they'll have what's displayed. So too awesome, too outstanding, and too excited is what the user will click on, but the value that's passed will be awesome, outstanding, exciting, and that'll be the value of the object class. So we save this up, and let's take a look at. Now with the checkbox, I can make multiple selections, and this is going to prove to be a little tricky for us in the Java when we're importing that, so we'll keep that in mind. I can also, if I want to format these a little differently, I can put a break at the end. And now they're running vertical instead of horizontal. So let's take a look at the results and how we'll capture this in the results. Since you can select multiple checkboxes, we're going to expect multiple instances of the object class coming into the results page. So I want to capture all of those. And up here, I can only capture one. So I only had one thing coming in as first, and I put it in the string. One thing coming in as last, and I put it in the last name in that string. But when I have multiple coming in of the same name, I need to create arrays and loop through the arrays. So I'm going to come down here and insert some Java. So I'm not doing anything up above. I'm going to do my work down here. And the first thing I need to do is create a string array. And I'm going to call it class. I can't. That's a protected class eval. One thing I had a problem with, class is a protected word because of Java classes. So I went back to the index page and changed it to class eval. And then in results, I need to capture that. So I created a new table row. Here's the label, this class. That'll appear on the left. And then the table data on the right, I actually am inserting quite a bit of Java in there. So I open and close my Java tags. And then let me walk you through what I'm doing here. So I can have more than one class eval come across. So a first name, I expect only one of those. A last name, age, etc., only one. When I'm using the radio buttons, you can only select one of those, so there'll only be one object coming across. But for class eval, they're checkboxes, and you can check more than one. So I expect multiple class evaluations to come across, or class evals to come across, with multiple different values. So I need to capture all of those, and the easiest way to do it is to use an array. And here I'm using a string array. So I will, for every class eval, I'll create a new instance of it, and I'll just keep adding to it, to the array. So to add the objects and the values coming across into that array, here I've created the array, here I'm populating it. Now this is a little different. I have to get parameter values, and this class eval is this. And so now that I'm getting parameter values and those are coming across, if I have got one selected, I only have a one position array. If I have three selected, I'll have a 3-position array. And so now that I have that array, I need to loop through it and put that information back out or make it usable. So the first thing I want to do is check and make sure that the array isn't null. So I'm using an if statement. So if class evaluations is not null, that means there's something in it, then I'll do this. But if it is null, so here's the opening if, the closing of the if statement. This is something going on inside of there. So if it is null, else, then I'm just going to put the word none in there. So if it is null, I'm going to put the word none. But if it's not null, then I'm going to do the stuff in between the if loop here, or the if statement here. And the thing I'm going to do is a loop. I'm going to do a for loop. And I need a counter. So I'm creating the counter. It's an integer. I'm setting it at 0. I'm going to keep looping as long as the integer number is less than the number of arrays that I have. So if I have 3 class evals come across, I would have a 3 position array. I'm going to keep looping as long as my loop number, I, is less than 3. When I is equal to 3, then it's going to stop because it found the last one. I'm going to increment it at the top of each loop. And what I'm going to do inside of that loop, so open bracket or open brace, close brace, is I'm going to have a blank space. Then I'm going to dump out that array, the address position I'm in. So on the first loop through, I'm going to dump the thing in the first array position. On the second loop through, it'll dump the thing in the second loop position. And the third loop through, it'll dump the thing in the third array position. And then I'm going to append to that a blank space. So it's just a way of creating space between the words or whatever's coming back in those array positions. So this is fairly complex when you're looking at it the first time. After you've worked with it a little bit, it'll get better. But I'm simply doing an if statement, and inside of that if statement, I'm doing a pretty basic loop. And all of that's happening within that table data associated with this class. So let's see how all this is going to work. So on my form, if I just select 1, I only have a 1 position array. It gets the values that are coming across with the object class eval. If it's not null, it's not. I have a 1 position array. So then it's going to loop. It's going to start at 0, and it's going to loop until it gets equal to 1, and then it'll stop looping. It's going to increment from 0 to 1, and it's going to find that first position, that first array position, and dump whatever is in there, going to dump it out. And it's going to dump out exciting, outstanding, awesome, depending on what I checked. And apparently I checked awesome. If I create a 2 position array, it'll get both of those words. Both those values, sorry. If I get a 3 position, it'll get all 3 of them. If I check none, if it's not null, well, it is null, so it dumps out none. It prints out none. So this is using checkboxes inside of the table, and we'll take a look at one other way we can use checkboxes. Here's just one more way to format in HTML5. So this is using a field set. If I look at what I did, you'll notice I'm outside of the table, so table is closed. I put a couple breaks in there to space it. Field set, the legend, what pets do you have, and then the input types. These are just checkboxes, different value, different object name, different values, and then the close button. So I'm outside of the table, but I'm still in the form. And it's just another way, another look at it, another way to make it look. So if I get inside of here, I'll want to do something very similar. This will be pets. pet, sorry. So I'm going to create a string array named pet. I'm going to populate that array with whatever is coming over as the object pet. I'm going to make this a little less confusing. I'm going to do my pet. So I created a string array named my pet. I'm populating that array with what's coming across the object pet. If it's not null, I want to create a loop that's the same size as the array. And then I'm going to loop down through it and dump that out, dump all of them out, so I get all of them. Otherwise, I'm going to say none. So let's test this. And everything appears to be working correctly. So I would want to do quite a bit more testing to make sure everything is actually coming across and is handling errors correctly, that the required fields are marked as required,